Hello and welcome. I'm Ana, and this is a new episode of Proyecto Co, a channel that explores ideas, methods, and mental models that will help you expand your knowledge around social innovation, develop your potential, and master the best of what experts and entrepreneurs have already learned. Regeneration is an increasingly popular topic. We hear it mostly in relation to the land and as one of the most efficient techniques to take care of our environment. But today, we talk about the regeneration of people and society. Specifically, we talk about regenerative leadership. Daniela Cox, co-founder of Plura Consulting, guides us on the path to integrate and experience sustainability and regeneration in leadership and business from a holistic and systemic vision. Daniela, welcome to Proyecto Co. It is such a pleasure to have you on board.
Thank you, Ana. Thank you for the opportunity.
I'm very much looking forward to get to know your opinion about the current approaches to leadership. Which are the approaches that you have been confronted with or that you have gotten to know, and what would you improve in them?
The one I am currently promoting is the one called Regenerative Leadership. It's hopefully it becomes a movement. I got very inspired by the co-author Laura Storm. She's a Danish writer of a book called Regenerative Leadership, and she was also actually the person leading the program I was taking together with Jenny Anderson from the United States. And both women were basically revealing to me many aspects and visions, basically, which resonated to previous events that were already bringing meaning to my life. So I was already experiencing some approaches with the B Corp certification processes, joining some companies to evaluate their practices and operations, and it was still missing a little bit of a more humane, could it be, adaptive and more organic way of understanding the leadership and the business models, in the sense that in regeneration we don't compete, we collaborate. It's a very conscious mindset, and it's also related to embracing diversity. So that's, I think, one of the points main points that really resonated to me the most.
That's super interesting, because generally I would think B Corps are already an evolved version of organizations, no? If I understand it well, regenerative leadership would be to go one step further in the process, no? Because generally I associate regeneration to the environment, but how does it apply to people, to society, and to leadership?
That's a very good question. It basically understands humans as part of nature instead of actually disconnecting or bringing this separation of systems. And that is actually why sustainability itself has not been working properly, because we still understand it from this level of growth or development, and misunderstand it in the sense that we are using the wrong parameters to measure success, growth, development. We are mostly based on extractive activities. Even the indexes of development so far are based on how much, for example, oil a country produces or exports, how much food it produces, considering it's a unhealthy food produced, right? A massive food production. So it's not actually nurturing, it's not a caring economy like the one that Brianna Isler also from the United States promotes. So we are here kind of disrupting and bringing alternatives to the current leadership model and business model, even though the B Corps are already actually, and of course, are very evolved, as you mentioned. I think in regeneration, it goes a step farther because it perceives thriving and flourishing as the pathway. Not the goal, I think, is the pathway itself, because we learn in the process. It's not perfect, and it's continuously evolving.
Because when I think of regeneration, I think of ecosystems. No, I think of having the big tree and having the small worm and a lot of diversity and different species interacting and nurturing each other. So how would that apply to leadership? Does it depend on one person? Is it like, how should we imagine it?
It basically understands organizations as living systems. So if we understand in terms of systems, we start from the self, then we go to the design level, and then it applies also to the culture itself. So if one person is aware about its own adaptation, its own interaction, instead of just thinking about transactions of money and these financial purposes or goals, and then we understand in a more deep way, in a more profound way, in terms of mindset, in terms of feelings also. So it's more intuitive, it's less precise, it's more abstract probably for some people, but it's also very continuously changing, right? So it's not measurable, and that's why it's so interesting, because it brings a lot of unexpected surprises, like nature itself. And that's why organizations actually are one of the best examples of living systems, because organizations are they are made of humans, and we all are individuals, like independent worlds itself, right? Ourselves. So to get to understand, embrace this, respect this, and cooperate within each other's, I think that's the main challenge that now and after Corona we all are realizing it's very important to take into account as well.
It seems very natural to me to think of regenerative leadership in a system of organization in which everybody is their own boss. Everybody's empowered, but it goes more into the idea of a community or of a collective. How can we then adapt the current organizational systems, which are more hierarchical and objective-oriented, to be more regenerative?
With first accepting that we don't need to be all first looking equally or thinking equally or, agreeing all the time, but actually giving the opportunity to face our differences and embrace them as opportunities instead of actually obstacles. So once we understand that by co-working not only with a male leader, or a male in the boarding department, right, but also with more women, more people from the gay community, from different ethnic backgrounds, people here in Denmark, let's say within Danish people, Latin American people, African people, it's going to definitely add a value to that organization itself. So that's one specific example. Another example is also to start using other parameters to measure, which don't have to be always competitive or numerical, but I mean, they could be also more profound in terms of how are we feeling, because there's nothing wrong about including feelings. And that's why the current paradigm of leadership and business model has been always very competitive, hierarchical, extractive, right? Oppressive also, if we want to think about how even people in these very progressive countries like Denmark, they don't have sometimes in their own works, or many times, the capacity to share a different opinion to their boss because they are afraid of being fired, or being confronted. And this happens not only in Denmark, of course, and this is kind of disruptive to hear, oh wow, in Denmark happens that. And to me it was a little bit shocking. I don't work inside of a company. I run a family company, so I am the boss. But what I mean is, it's it's kind of sad also, because then you understand that all of these stress problems, depressive problems, are related to the way we handle leadership, and also the way we lead ourselves or handle ourselves, the interactions within human beings and our own feelings as well.
Allowing people to be more authentic, not to be afraid of confrontation, because confrontation is innovation and evolution, and diversity is development. What are the results? Can you give us some examples of current organizations that do implement regenerative leadership, and how they went from traditional leadership to being regenerative, and which are the impacts?
Well, for example, in Ecuador, there is one small company. It's actually a very small enterprise or entrepreneurship, actually. It's called Kinty Down. They work with the Down syndrome as their daily living condition. So it's an indigenous mother from the Andes. Her name is Cristina. She's an environmental engineer. And coming from a background, where she's indigenous, she's a woman, and she was sharing with us in our company the fact that the Down syndrome is a condition that, of course, is not widely taught or expressed within their own indigenous community, which is a community that is highly united itself in terms of beliefs, practices, values also, collectively speaking. And however, it has been very hard for her to incorporate this difference and use it in a positive way, understood by the rest of the community, of course. Herself as a mother, she's a different story. She's the one actually bringing this new mindset in breaking stereotypes by actually incorporating, for example, 4 specific SDGs from the Sustainable Development Goals from the United Nations, identifying them, incorporating them, and communicating them. That's one specific program we help her doing with our company. So in this sense, she's regenerative because she's being aware of the difference, using it in a positive way, not expressing it in a sense of pity or, like, hey, I face these challenges all the time. But she also brings like the positive side of incorporating a person who has a difference, of course, physical difference, but it's actually a positive aspect or a positive trait within her lifestyle and within her company, in the sense that she could become an inspiration for other mothers, or not only in the condition of Down syndrome, but many other neurodiversities, right? So this is a specific example of embracing differences and becoming regenerative compared to the rest of the companies in the market.
Plura, you help organizations to implement the good practices of regenerative leadership. Which are the 3 main lessons that you have learned throughout the process, and what would you recommend to somebody or an organization that wants to migrate to this new way of leading?
I recommend 3 specific values because I think this movement or this vision, it's definitely based on understanding or being more aware, right, of different conditions or qualities that not always are easy to handle. So living this comfort zone and accepting the challenges, it's like climate change. You don't have to think about protecting yourself from natural disasters, but you actually have to start taking action, right? So facing these challenges, these changes themselves. So caring is one value that I definitely consider as a fundamental foundation in a regenerative organization, because caring is not about only caring for the environment. It starts from caring for yourself, caring for your own mindset or your neurodiversity, accepting your neurodiversity. If you have it, speak it up to your boss, to your partner, to your family, your friends. Yeah, once you are aware of your own caring lifestyle, therefore you develop this empathy, and you can also create or nourish this caring for the environment, caring for society, right? Then also the second value would be balance, because it's about balancing your inner mindset, your inner ideas, your inner interactions, and also the outer ones. We cannot speak about sustainability if internally we are not keeping, the right interactions within our own system. Let's say we are not sleeping the right time, we are not eating healthy, we are not managing the right way, the food waste, for example, we all produce every day, the 3 times we eat. So it has to be very consistent, right, in what we are preaching and what we are doing. And also balancing in terms of finding an equilibrium between dualities, right, because we don't have to be competing all the time, for example, in different aspects like men versus women, indigenous knowledge versus modern sciences, the northern hemisphere regions versus the southern hemisphere regions. But, why don't we think about recombining both and getting the feminine mindset with the masculine mindset, not in terms actually of gender, but in terms of roles and how our brain works with the left and right hemisphere. And then the last one is diversity, the third pillar or value that I would recommend for an organization to become more regenerative or an individual to become more regenerative is embracing diversity. Diversity not only in terms of, ethnic backgrounds or religion, but also in terms of beliefs. And even each individual, each of us has or faces almost every day dualities or diverse mindsets and diverse feelings, diverse ideas or knowledge. So it's fine to keep changing, to keep trying, to explore, and to adapt ourselves depending the conditions, and use the ones that are more accurate for our environment and social interactions.
Wow, this sounds super inspiring, Daniela. Thank you so much for sharing, because sharing, balance, diversity are also, they're principles that also apply on a personal level. Now I'm thinking, yes, I need to care of myself in order to be able to care of others. I need to be balanced in order to help others, all the people that I relate to have a balanced life. And I need to embrace the diversity within me and speak it up in order to also accept the diverse context that I embrace in my everyday life. And also in order to create this positive social and environmental impact that we need to. And right now, unfortunately, we're seeing how the world is going into this polarized extremes.
Exactly. And also because once we face these caring, balance, and diversity values, we can also accept that, what happens within ourselves brings also more sense in terms of empathy to understand the other. Because if I judge myself, if I'm continually confronting myself because I don't know what's happening, I don't know why I'm not that productive, I don't know why I have these fears, I don't know why I'm not successful, in the wrong way of thinking what means successful, I'm starting also blaming the other. So when we embrace regeneration, we become more connected with nature and therefore with the other, because when you are open, right, to listen to the wisdom of nature, I know it could sound for some people very abstract or very difficult, very poetic, romantic, you basically, and it's proven, you become more focused, you become more creative, and therefore you become more empathic. And if we think about the 17 SDGs, actually there is none of them which has to do with empathy. And this is like what people, who understand the chakras and all this ancestral wisdom, they understand the third eye is this other level of evolution where people are more sensitive towards themselves and towards the others. If we all would have that capacity of feeling ourselves and feeling the others, listening ourselves and the others, I'm more than sure that we would have a completely different story or history in terms of no wars, more feminine mindsets, taking decisions, leading the schools, investing in economics that are more caring instead of competitive, extractive, hierarchical, because the interest or the priorities would completely be others than the ones we are currently facing. And Afghanistan is one clear example about that. Then another aspect that is important to mention is the fact that also evolution, and all these theories that we have learned, even myself coming from the Galapagos Islands, where we learned that is the fittest, the one who survived, right? It's not the biggest, of course, but the fittest. It has been also misunderstood because, according, for example, to Laura Storm, she mentions, it was completely fascinating to me to hear that, because it's actually the one that interacts the best with the environments and the surroundings, right? This means also the living ecosystems, right? Other animals, other humans in this case. They are the ones who actually are capable to adapt themselves and to evolve. So we were misunderstanding what means to be capable to survive by competing. That's not the pathway, but we have been taught, because of the interests of just a few and their convenience, that this model of leadership and economy or business was the one that we all had to follow. And therefore, with Regeneration, we are bringing a new paradigm of how we could and should start thinking about ourselves and the others.
Not only are you helping organizations to move towards a more evolved stage, but also the society and the economy, all organizations. Because how would a regenerative economy look like?
So, for example, starting from the first stage, which is the self, the second stage would be design a more regenerative society or market. And then the third level would be to embrace or to thrive in a more regenerative culture. So it definitely has to do with the politicians, planners, decision makers, but we also understand that it has to come from each individual, in the sense that if everyone is welcome to participate and make decisions, and take a seat in this big table where there's not only a few the ones making the decisions and ruling for all of us, like during colonization times, and still nowadays, colonialism brings its sequels or consequences in terms of how we use the Eurocentric mindset in order to make decisions. Even the United Nations have still some challenges to improve, I think. Even in Denmark, right, there is this plan for the 2030 agenda, and they are still thinking that, okay, Denmark or the European countries need to help or push the South American countries to become more sustainable. And then if we analyze with a little bit more critical thinking, Latin America itself is actually way more regenerative than many other countries in Europe, because Latin America has the indigenous communities, which represent just 5% of the entire world population, and they protect 80% of the entire biodiversity in our planet, which we all are depending on. So it is important to build new narratives and connect systems. And then we change from the self, right, the person, to start designing politics, educational plans, art frameworks, which start then disrupting these paradigms that were just set without analyzing or questioning them properly. And finally, we all start adopting a more diverse, caring, and balanced society and markets, which are definitely what Regeneration is aiming for.
Thank you so much, Daniela, for your inspirational words and for sharing all your wisdom with us, because I really believe it's time for regeneration.
Thank you so much, Anna.
Thank you for listening to this episode. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. You can find all the references of the episode on our website, www.efectocolibri.com/proyectoco. If you liked it, rate us with 5 stars, leave us a comment, and share it with your network. This will help us reach more people and make social innovation become the norm. So in advance, a big thank you. If you have questions, feedback, or want to introduce us to a guest for the podcast, you can write us directly at ana@efectocolibri.com. See you next time.